Okay, so welcome one, welcome all. We are doing a presentation today called So You've Applied, What Next? And that may well apply to most of you because you probably have applied. You're probably applicants and you're probably in or from Southeast Asia because that's my region, that's where I work. I'm Daniel, I'm the one on the left there with the slightly unshaven appearance there. And I am Regional Manager for Southeast Asia and I'm based in Plymouth. But on board, we have my excellent colleague, Jeannie, who's also Regional Manager for Southeast Asia, but based in Southeast Asia in KL. Hi, Jeannie.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you on the screen here. I think I've met some of you already during our events and happy to answer any questions that you have for today.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeannie.
you.
So we are like a tag team. So we're in two different locations and two different time zones. So yes, you are time traveling right here, right now. So reach out to us at any point. And a top tip for you, the email address you can see on the screen, sea.office@plymouth.ac.uk, actually reaches both of us. So if in doubt, you can always use that email address and that'll sit in both of our inboxes. And whichever person is most available, depending on the time of day, to answer it, we'll get it answered for you. So that's how to reach out to us if you have a very specific question about your application. But the aim of today is to really have a bit of a deep dive, hence the picture taken from my personalized submarine this morning, into the application process. And we'll just do a little bit of a reminder of geography, a little bit about Plymouth to set the scene as where I am here in Britain's Ocean City this fine Wednesday. And it is fine today. The sun is out. It's lovely. But we're really going to be focusing in on the application process, an overview, and what your next steps might be. That will give you some information on what to expect and what you might need to do in order to expect that next step to happen. Connected to that, we'll think about the timing, because at the time that I'm saying this today, live, it's the 17th of April, so it's mid-April 2024, and we're talking about September 2024 entry. But of course, you might be watching this as a recording on our YouTube channel. If you are, welcome aboard too, no matter where you're from. This information is not Southeast Asia specific. It's just for our region, but anyone can watch on the YouTube page. But bear in mind the timing when you watch it. It may be, of course, later, so we have to think about that time factor. It's always important. In addition to an overview of the application process, we want today to be a little bit about empowerment. We want you to feel that you will have some things that you can be doing in the meantime between now and September to get yourself ahead, to get yourself feeling more prepared, to get yourself better informed, and to have that empowerment feeling. It does feel good to know that you're in control. So hopefully a few top tips and some advice on how to do that. And that will include the often asked questions around accommodation, because of course, at this time of year, we're starting to get more and more applicant accommodation related questions. And that's very normal. I've studied overseas myself and accommodation was a big deal for me too. So I totally understand. We'll do a bit of a focus on that today as well. And we'll give a tiny little flavor, just an early flavor of what university life might look or feel like a little bit for you. But more about that will be coming in another webinar soon. I'll tell you about that soon as well. As I mentioned, it's a Q&A option as well. So we'll do the Q&A session at the end, but you can get your questions in the question box from now. And then Jeannie might be able to either give you an answer or a holding answer initially during the presentation, or we might deal with them as a group at the end. Okay, so that's probably how we'll do it. There is also a chat box. The chat box is going to be reserved for us in case we think there's a useful link that might be worth dropping into the chat box for you. So the chat will be where any useful links might be put. But I'm also a bit of a fan, a bit of a huge fan of a QR code. So if you have wanted to do it this way, then there's a lot of QR codes coming up. So just grab those. And you have heard me say, yes, this is going to be recorded and put on a YouTube channel soon too, probably within a day or so. Right, a lot to do. And at the end, let's start with the first bit. A little bit of a reminder about Plymouth, just a small geography lesson. That's all it's going to be. So just to let you know, yes, we are in southwest England. People get confused about England and Britain. Well, Britain is comprised of England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. We're in the England bit, and we're in the very south and very west of England, southwest England, otherwise known as the West Country. We are 3 hours by train from central London, or it's about 4 hours by coach or bus from Heathrow Airport. And that's often the way that students might do it. A little bit more about that later. We're known as Britain's Ocean City, as I've already mentioned, because we're next to the sea, but the campus is also very near the sea, and it's also right in the city centre. As you can see on this map, it's a 15, 10, or 5-minute walking radius from the campus to almost everything that you need. And that does allow a lot of convenience for students, and it also keeps the cost down, because of course, walking is free. You'll see here that the ocean of Britain's Ocean City is right there. And the orange bit is the campus where I'm sat right now. And that is a 15-minute walk between the two. And we've got accommodation on campus or near campus. On campus is the student-managed accommodation and across the street as well. And that's for undergraduate students primarily. But don't worry, postgrad students, they can stay across the other road or in other accommodation very near here. More about that in a moment. And in case you like shopping, the mall is the pink bit there just across the street. So if I do need to rush in and buy a new baseball cap or some shoes, I can in my lunch break. Not that I like shopping very much. Anyway, let's get started with the main part, talking about the application overview and what your next steps might be. And we'll put timing into that a little bit as well. Now, it is possible that you haven't actually applied. Most students attending this will have, because that's who we invited. Yet you might have asked a friend to join you, and that's fine too. Or maybe you're watching this on the YouTube channel and you haven't applied yet. Well, that's fine too. I'm not going to go into the detail of how to apply because that's not most of you today. But in case that is you, then just grab that link or get onto that QR codes page, and it tells you how to do so, whether you're an undergraduate student looking for a bachelor degree or a postgrad student looking for a master or beyond. So that's very simple. Let's deal with assuming that you will have applied. Now, many of you will have applied and many of you will already be an offer holder. It's probably a conditional offer. Now, it might be that you don't have an offer yet. That's okay. If you've recently applied, it may be that we haven't made an offer yet. But I did look at our offers list just yesterday, and the vast majority of the students who have applied, except those who just applied in the last couple of days, have already got an offer. So that's where most of you are sitting. And most of you will have what's called a conditional offer yet. And that's because maybe you haven't finished something that you still need to do. Maybe you're still in college or high school or university, or there's other documents still needed. That's probably why you're a conditional offer holder. If that's you, or if that's going to be you soon, the first thing you can do, or the next thing you can do, once you've got your conditional offer, is to firm accept it, so that we know that you intend to join us. And the offer letter will tell you what to say and how to do that. Basically, reply to us to say that you accept the offer. That way we know that it's your intention to go further through this process. And what is the next step of that process? Well, it is to meet the conditions marked on your offer letter. Now, of course, the offer letter will say what those conditions are. But for example, they might be something like this. Finish your high school or college or university or polytechnic or wherever you're studying. Maybe to achieve certain grades or a GPA. It may be an average or it may be specific grades and subjects too. Again, the offer letter will give good detail about that. It may be that we're just missing some documents, such as your final transcript or your certificates that prove that you've completed it and got that certain grade. Or it may be that you need to prove your English proficiency, such as to do IELTS and gain a certain result, or show us that you have other tests that mean you don't need to take the IELTS test. So once you do that, and only once you've done all of that, that's when you'll be invited to pay deposit. And the deposit is a minimum of £3,500 deposit. The maximum, you could pay the full year's tuition fee if you wish. Now, most students don't wish to do that, and that's fine. Just the £3,500 at this stage is a-okay. Now, of course, please do remember the deposit is not an additional fee. It's nothing on top of what you're expected to pay for your tuition. It is a part of your tuition fee. In effect, it's like the first installment, if you wish. So you do that only when we ask you to do so, which is only once you've met your academic conditions. We want to make sure that you're fully accepted and ready to go to that next stage before we ask you to pay your deposit, you see. At this time, you're also asked to complete a pre-CAS checklist. What's that? Or rather, what is a CAS? Maybe a good question. So, a CAS is a CAS, a confirmation of acceptance for studies. Confirmation of acceptance for studies. And the translation of that I like to use a lot is electronic visa letter thing. Yes, that's a very technical term, electronic visa letter thing. So the CAS is what we need to issue you to apply for your visa. And so we do the pre-CAS checklist just to make sure we've got all your details exactly correct and exactly as they should be compared to your passport, so that when you apply for your visa, all the data matches and there's not going to be any errors or issues. So that's when you apply for your visa, once you've got the CAS. And once you've got your visa, that's when you'll book your flight and the airport pickup. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but not too much detail. We are only in April after all. So quite a little process there as a conditional offer holder, but it actually moves quite quickly. And in fact, this year already, we have some students who've gotten through almost all of this. They're almost at the point where they're going to be getting their visa, because we already have some students who have been issued their CAS. Now, I'm not telling that to all of you just to panic you. I'm just saying we're actually earlier in our processing this year and faster in doing that, which is great. And it just means that we want any student who's ready to take the next step to go ahead and take it, because the sooner you get through the processes, the easier it will be for you when visa application comes, because you'll have more time to do it. Once you book your flight and airport pickup, of course, we look forward to seeing you in Plymouth. But it's just worth noting this other arrow up here that actually, because a lot of students get questions about accommodation, if you're an undergraduate student who wants to stay on campus with us, then you can actually apply for our university managed halls of residence at the very, very first step on this slide, at the firm accept our offer, even if it's a conditional offer, to show that you wish to join us. You can apply for a halls of residence all the way at that early stage. Now, if you're a postgrad student, we'll talk about your accommodation options in a minute as well, so don't worry. The reason why we offered to undergraduate students as priority for our on-campus accommodation is simply because they're typically students who've never lived away from home before, and they might need a little bit more support as compared to a postgraduate student who usually values a bit more independence. That's the prioritization reason. So obviously right now, for many of you, perhaps even most of you, in April, it's a question of meeting those conditions, whatever those are. So I've just circled that to be reminding you that that's probably the next step for most of you. If you've got them, get them to us ASAP, to the admissions team. If you haven't got them yet, don't panic that you haven't got them. We don't expect you to have done that yet if we know you're still in school or college, etc. But do what you can, when you can, it will help you. Okay. Now, some people say, what does an unconditional offer letter look like? Sometimes you need an unconditional offer letter. Well, basically, it's just the last bit of that slide. It's just that everything's been done, including the deposit and the pre-CAS checklist, and then it's time to apply for the visa. So if you've heard your friends saying, oh, I've already got my unconditional offer, it's probably that they're just a bit further through the system than you are, and maybe that will get you there soon if you can get us the remaining documents. Okay? I've checked in with admissions just this morning. Just this morning, I spoke to my admissions colleagues, and they're saying that currently, as soon as you've got to the pre-CAS checklist and you submit the documents and the deposit, if you've done that in the time frame or in the way that we've asked you, it's going to take 1 or 2 days after that for CAS issuance. CAS issuance. So it's actually really swift at this stage. Of course, the busier times of year, it will take a little bit longer. Again, don't worry, just get to the next step that you can get to when you can. So I'm mentioning this word timing pretty much throughout my talk today. And that's just to remind you, again, that in April, we're in good shape. We have good time frame, but time does go quickly, especially if you're busy with exams and coursework and just life generally. So time does have a nasty habit of evaporating. It really does. So do try and keep an eye on what your next step is, and your offer letter or your communication from admissions will always tell you where you are and what your next step is, and see if you can get to the next step a little bit sooner. It will only help you. Now, connected to timing is that point of some important or key dates. So let's get those right now. 9th of September is the International Student Welcome Week. 16th of September is the Induction Week. 23rd of September, classes start. Now, I know what some people may be thinking. I can read your minds. I am telepathic. Some students will say, oh, that's okay. I don't need to arrive until September 23rd, or maybe September 24th. Wrong, no, not good. It's really important that we prepare our international students as well as possible to settle in, be ready, be signed up for everything they need to be signed up for, and truly ready to start. Now, that means that we have a specialized International Welcome Week, especially for you guys. And so if you want to see all the academic dates, you can use this link to do so, but essentially the ones I'm telling you are the ones you need to remember for 2024. And just to make a highlight, I've highlighted that date there. And if you don't think that's enough, then here's a few more arrows for you, just to make it super duper clear. Now, some students might also say, because I am also telepathic in other ways, they might say, well, if that's the date that the Welcome Week starts, maybe I should arrive a week earlier than that, just to kind of settle in before the settling in. Well, I would actually say no, I wouldn't do that. The Welcome Week is intended to incorporate your arrival, including airport pickup. Now, we don't have the finalized timings for the airport pickup, but they will coincide with this 9th of September date. So if in doubt, just remember that date, and that's what you're going to be aiming for in terms of flying in, and the rest we will sort later. It's a really, really important week, and we'll give lots more detail about that in later webinars and pre-departure info, and it will be live on our web pages later, just not at this time. Don't worry, just remember the date for now. So that's the International Week. The 16th is super important because that's your program induction. So that's really important to get them here for and be already settled in before that. And then it's the following week where you're actually starting class. So now you have those key dates. A couple of other just reminders about some future events. We've got a day in the student life, which is another webinar that I'll be holding with Jeannie, and this will be with some of our current Southeast Asia international students here in Plymouth, living and studying and doing all that they do. And so we're going to learn from them about what their student life is. That's coming soon. It's probably going to be the very beginning of May, but I will invite you all again, as I invited you before, to that event. And I really hope you can attend, because then you can meet some students and ask them stuff instead of asking me stuff. Hooray. Then in July, we'll do some pre-departure information, and that will be either in person in market or again on online. In fact, we'll do both. Okay, so look out for those soon. Plus, your faculty or your program are running some own information-based webinars about meeting academics or learning more about your program or your school. So look out for communications about that too. Okay, what have we done so far? Well, we've talked a little bit about the application overview and about the timing. Then we're going to get into the middle part, in the meantime, how to get ahead, talking about accommodation, university life. Okay, on with the presentation. What to do in the meantime. This is the empowerment bit. This is what can you be doing now to get yourself more ready and more aware of what it's going to be like when you get here. And I've got like a kind of a 5-pointed star, kind of. And it's look into accommodation, check passport, check scholarships, prepare funds, and virtual tour. So let's start with a big one here, look into accommodation. Here's a useful link. This is a link on our website, accommodation for applicants. If you prefer, I've got a QR code and it's right about here. So on that page, it tells you such things as frequently asked questions and things you probably want to ask, and it's easier if you just read that first. You'll be able to see which our halls of residence are, how you pay for the accommodation, and if you have any specific accommodation requirements, that's how you let us know as well. Now, this is for the predominantly undergraduate student or prioritized undergraduate applicant, as I mentioned earlier. If you want to see what those halls of residence are, well, I'll show you. It's on the webpage, or you can just keep watching. We've got Francis Drake, we've got Gilwell, we've got Mary Newman, we've got Pilgrim, Radnor, and Robbins. Those are our on-campus accommodation or just across the street in the student village, so like a 3-minute walk away. Now, if you're very, very eagle-eyed and paying attention to these photographs super closely, you'll see, wow, those student rooms are really neat and tidy and clean. I'm not sure that all student rooms are always quite so neat and tidy and clean. I know mine never was. I suspect these photographs were taken on day one. If you're also very eagle-eyed, you'll spot that some rooms will have a toilet, shower, wash basin attached to them. They're called ensuite, an ensuite room. An ensuite room is not available to every single room in every single hall of residence, okay? So they're often ones that students want the most. They're the most popular. So if you do have a desire for ensuite and you're going to stay on campus, then you need to really have got your application in ASAP. Remember, once you've firm accepted our conditional offer and you're an undergraduate student, you can apply for the halls of residence. But of course, the ensuite reflects in the cost. So the ensuite rooms are typically around 160 to 185 per week. The non-ensuite rooms on campus are around about 120 to 150 per week. And the other reasons for the cost change might be location or age or size of room, for example. So that's just a range there. If you go to the website, you can actually see the exact prices of these accommodations, okay? But here's that map again. I know you've seen it before. You go, oh yes, I remember. You said that Plymouth has a lot of things all within a short walking distance. I did say that. I meant it. It also includes the off-campus accommodation as well. So the majority of things you would need on a day-to-day basis, including the off-campus accommodation, the majority of that is still in this map. So here's another QR code. I told you I liked them, so here's another one. This one gets you to our private sector accommodation advice on our website. And this is useful to any student, any of you, but it's usually more useful to postgraduate applicants who are not likely to be staying on campus. Remember, off campus in Plymouth may be very similar distance, maybe equidistant to the on-campus stuff, okay? If you go to that link, if you use that QR code, you'll see that there are halls of residence also listed on that webpage. These are university halls of residence, but not our own. These are full of university students, of our students, but they're privately owned. They're Alexandra Works, Astor House, Beckley Point, Central Point, Cross House, Discovery Heights, Mary Parker House, St. Augustine's, Frobisher, St. Teresa, St. Thomas, the Courthouse, and the Old Dairy. So these are full of our students. They could be undergrad or postgrad students in there. Again, there's a price range, and the range might be a little bit broader because some of the non-ensuite rooms and some of the accommodation that's further away, and I think the furthest away of those buildings in those last 2 pages is a 15-minute walk, something like that. And the nearest one is about a 2-minute walk. I can actually look at it from my office window. So obviously, the nearer it is, the newer it is, the bigger it is, and if it's ensuite or not, that affects the price. If it's nearer and newer, it's probably towards the higher end. But a typical average for off-campus accommodation for ensuite is probably around 150, 160 per week, something like that. But that's an average, and that's a guide. So my advice is research by looking at these accommodations, find their webpage, which is very easy because you'll know where they are, and then you can look into availability and prices and room types. And I would do that as soon as you can, as soon as you know that you're coming to us. Now, some students will decide not to stay in these accommodations. They would prefer to stay in a shared house or apartment. So if you're a group of students coming together, if you're friends and you plan to do that, then you can also look into our advice on the same page, which talks about finding about housing agencies, accommodation agencies, landlords, and things like that. Sometimes that can be cheaper. And sometimes that can also be similar distance. In fact, most are similar distance, but not all. So always check what the accommodation is, where it is, of course, how much it is. Those are the key things. So those pages will give you a lot to be getting on with right now. So we won't have all the answers about accommodation today. It's about making sure you have the right tools in your hands to get started and do that research. This one's a quick one. Do please remember to check your passport and check it now. Well, not right now, but as soon as we're done with this one, or today, or latest tomorrow, that why put off till tomorrow what you can do today? Check your passport. Okay, if it's a British passport, you won't need to be applying for a visa, but assuming it's not, wherever your passport is from, do check where it is. Do check how it is. Don't ask it, how are you feeling? I mean, is it in good condition? Because passport offices and immigration offices are paying more attention to the state of passports these days. Damaged ones may be refused. And also check that it's going to be in date. So where it is, how it is it in date? And if any of those things are a problem for you, then finding that out now is really important because you'll have lots of time to get a new one applied for and received. The later you leave that, the less time you have, but also the busier those offices will be in the summertime dealing with other people's applications for their passport because they've lost theirs too. That way, doing it now stops that problem. And then, of course, make sure that if you do change your passport, you let the admissions team know your new passport copy. They need to have that because that's related to your CAS, confirmation, acceptance for studies for the visa. So that's a quick one. Next one, check regarding scholarships. It's a very important day for me to be telling you about this because later today, in fact, this evening, we are having our awards ceremony, our celebratory event for last year students who arrived in September 2023 who were awarded our largest scholarships, our excellence and great scholarships. So we're having this evening an award ceremony and a celebration and some food and drinks and all of that for the scholarship awardees. And I'd love to see some of you guys at next year's event when we do it again. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, check your offer letter. If you have already been selected as eligible for a scholarship, we'll put it on your offer letter. But there are some scholarships where you need to do a secondary scholarship application, and those are for the academic excellence scholarships. So maybe check your GPA or look at your grades. It's possible that admissions might have overlooked things. They're not robots, they're humans. They might have missed something. Maybe they could have awarded you a scholarship or maybe not, but let's double check that, right? Or maybe your GPA has greatly improved since you started your application process, and maybe now you're becoming eligible for a scholarship. So do also check our website. Here's a link for our scholarship information, and yes, here's a QR code for the same page. And that will get you onto our website, and the undergrad page might look a bit like that. The postgrad one might look a bit like that, and it tells you which programs are included in which different scholarships. And bear in mind, some of them do have a separate application form. So if you want to apply for a scholarship that has a separate application form, check that now because they have earlier deadlines. I don't want to tell you what the deadline is because I don't want a flurry of applications on deadline day. I want our super empowered students to apply for our scholarships early. That helps you. Okay. Related to scholarships is preparing for your funds. So it's important as you apply for your visa that your tuition fee and living cost is well prepared in advance so that your visa application is likely to go successfully, but also so that when you do get to Plymouth, you kind of know where you need to be regarding your funding and your financial support. So the fees for September 2024 entry are noted in this table here. And where you see a range, it's typically the number on the left is if it's a business or possibly an arts-related program, and the number on the right is typically if it's a science or engineering tuition fee, which has a higher cost due to lab fees and equipment. So for bachelor degree students, their tuition fee is likely to be between £17,100, £18,100 per year. And of course, your offer letter will say that too. And if you're in doubt, the program page, the specific program you're applying to, that degree page on our website will also say what the fees are. So there's different ways of looking at it, but your offer letter is probably the easiest way to check that. And that's per year. But when you're applying for the visa, you only have to prepare the 1 year's fee. Now, similarly, a master's degree tuition fee, you can read it there, what the fee is. But it's worth also noting or remembering that most master degrees are only 1 year. So you don't have to think about multiples, really. You just have to think of it multiplied by 1. But for the visa application, in any case, you only have to prepare 1 year's tuition fee plus the living cost. Now, the UKVI currently advise the living cost to be 9207. That's a strange number. I don't know where they got that 7 from. That's the UKVI's expectation of living cost for not London. And as you know, Plymouth is not London. If it's London, it's like £12,000+ per year to live. So Plymouth is already defined as being less expensive than London. And our students will say that, of course, too. They really do. But we should remember living costs do depend on your lifestyle. So if you take a taxi everywhere and you never cook because you always go to a restaurant and you want an ensuite room with an ocean view, yes, you'll probably spend more. But if you're willing to make your budget, or you want to make your budget go further, well, in Plymouth you can. And that's often down to if you can live near campus and have a short walk between your accommodation and campus, where you'll save transportation costs. But a lot of students also budget carefully by going home at lunchtime, for example, and not eating out so often. That depends on you. You can figure that out in advance with various tools such as budget calculators on UCAS, or you can ask students about that when you get here as well. As long as you follow what the UKVI are saying, and our advice team will say, as long as you're preparing, well, the London cost is about £1,300 plus per month, but not London is around £900 to £1,300. But often students in Plymouth are saying, well, it's nearer to the nine, or £1,000 for the living cost, because living cost really means accommodation and food, any bills, transportation, basically everything that's not your tuition fee. If in doubt, just stick to what the UKVI advice is, which is prepare this figure, and that will see you right. Okay, a fun one now. Time for a little play. This is something you can do in the meantime, which is really easy, but actually might take a little while because you can kind of get lost in it, and that's our virtual tour. Not lost in a confused way, but lost in a wow way. So yes, here's another QR code. We should have had a question at the beginning to say, how many QR codes is Daniel going to use today? The answer is yes, a lot. This one gets you to our wonderful and very interactive virtual tour. And you kind of zoom in from the sky or even from space almost, and it looks a bit like that at the beginning. And then there's a variety of different views that you'll be able to interact with and pick, both on the campus and indeed inside the buildings, and indeed inside the rooms inside the buildings, and around Plymouth. I think there's 12 or more different secret spot ocean views that you can stepping stone down the coast of Britain's ocean city and surrounds. It's really lovely. It'll help you feel a bit more ready to get here and a bit more familiar with our campus when you do get here, but it's also quite fun. So have a play and look forward to seeing in 3D some of the things that you're seeing on your phones. So that was an easy one. Not all homework has to be hard. Okay, just a little flavor now for the last couple of minutes about university life. This will be brief, just to give you an idea. A lot of students ask what their schedule will be like, and a lot of students ask that early. I understand, but it's very difficult to be sure because that can depend on the program, and we won't advise that straight away. But a Monday might look like that with a lot of classes and some self-study periods. Tuesday might be different. Wednesday, you might be busy in the morning, and some students will be busy in the afternoon, some postgraduate students particularly, but most, if not all, undergraduate students will be free in the afternoon, and many postgrad students will be free in the afternoon as well, or at least part of the afternoon, so that you're free for clubs and societies at the same time. Thursdays might look like this, for example, and maybe Friday afternoons are a little bit less busy. And then, of course, the weekends. Well, we don't teach at weekends in the UK. But of course, you probably will have to do some self-study at some point. So maybe you'll do it then. That's up to you. So that's a flavor of what it might look like. Classes typically start at 9 a.m. They might run until the evening, but most are between 9 and 5. And there will be, of course, lunch breaks and things too. So just a little flavor there. Let's look briefly at those clubs and societies. We've got 155 of them currently. I know because I counted them. And here are a few of them. There's a range of things. There's some winter sports, there's some international ones, there's some fun ones, there's some academic ones. Well, those are fun too, of course. There's some sporting ones, some artsy related, pretty much anything you can imagine, and then things you've never imagined in your life. So you can just go to upsu.com, upsu.com. That's the University of Plymouth Students' Union. I can't believe it. I didn't put a QR code for that. Silly me. upsu.com is where all the clubs and activities and societies are. So why not check that one out as well? Okay, a little bit about the university side of things. Well, lectures and projects and seminars and exams and reports, well, it depends. Some programs don't have any exams or tests. For example, architecture is all coursework. And other programs are all project heavy and not exam heavy. So this is just an example of what university might look like, but it doesn't tell you much. That's what it looks like. A lecture looks like that. In fact, I'm going to be in that lecture theatre this evening because that's where we are having our award presentation for the scholarship awardees. So I'll be stood at the front right there. How exciting. We have other lecture theatres that look a bit like this. That's our immersive vision theatre. Our studios look like that, or they might do. That's one of our architecture studios. That's one of our biomedical virtual dissection tables for the biomed and related students. That's one of our Bloomberg suites for the business and finance students. We've got shipping simulators for the relevant students. We've got 22 different psychology labs, and that's one of them. We've got lots of different design and illustration spaces, individualized space for our students. We've got massive wave tank for our marine engineering students. We've got robotics labs and equipment. We've got media studios, including lots of very, very amazing technology to make the kinds of visual graphics that you see in movies and TV shows today. Lots of different labs for our science programs as well. That's our library. By the way, the library is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during the semester. It's always open. Finally, university life, yes, more accommodation. Some will have shared kitchens and shared living spaces, so look into that if that's what you're considering. Is it right for you? Some of them, especially the halls, will have even public areas or social areas, otherwise known as a common room. See if they have that, if that's important to you, and does that affect the price? Don't forget those clubs and societies, because it's a way to make friends outside of your classroom and try something you love or something new. Then we have time just to hang out by the seafront. Maybe you just want to go and hang out with your friends by the seafront, or join some musical performance yourself or listening to, or join some literature or some writing cafes that we have. We've got lots of different water sports and racket sports, and there's more water sports. There's surfing and scuba as well. Team sports, men's and women's. So we have team sports for everybody. Or perhaps just hang out with your friends in one of our 9 cafes on campus, correction, 10 cafes now on campus, or indeed at the seafront. We've got pop-up shops. We have a student union owned shop, like a convenience store, and we have pop-up shops like plant sales, poster sales, used clothing sales, things like that. And we have lots and lots and lots of foodie things going on all the time, which is rather good fun. Okay, we are very, very nearly done now. That was just a tiny little flavor as a way to show you what Plymouth might be like. But let's hear more about that when we do our next webinar in early May, which will be the day in the student life, where you'll hear from current students. And I'll ask them some questions, and you can ask them some questions too. But speaking of questions, let's go to the questions for right now. We've got about 10 minutes for us to see what questions we can get through. So I'm going to ask Jeannie to let me know if there's something that is really important that we deal with first, because we've got about 10 minutes. Thanks, Jeannie.
Yeah, thank you. I did have some of the questions we have answered already privately. So for the rest who have more questions, feel free to type your question in at the Q&A section.
Thank you.
Because I've answered all the questions earlier on.
Thank you, Jeannie. And whilst we are waiting for any further questions coming in, please note again some useful email addresses. The first one is the one I gave at the very beginning. That's the joint Jeannie and myself, sea.office@plymouth.ac.uk email address. But I know that anyone who's attending this live is likely to also have my email address. It's no secret. It's also floating next to my head. And it is the email address that I invited you to this event from. So it doesn't really matter which way you do it. You can reach us all. The international @ is for the whole of my colleagues in the international office here at Plymouth. In case Jeannie and myself are both traveling, as we sometimes are, then you can have a burning question answered by my wonderful colleagues in that office. And of course, the other one you've probably had communication with is our admissions team. And that's the third email address there, applications@plymouth.ac.uk. So you probably already have most of those email addresses. Reach out to us if a question bites you later that you didn't think to ask now.
Yes, we do have a question right now. Does Plymouth have any farmers market?
Farmers markets. Well, we have Right. So in Plymouth City Centre, we have a covered market, which is open, I believe it's 7 days a week. I can't remember if it's open on Sunday mornings. I haven't been there on a Sunday morning recently. I think it is. It's certainly open at least 6 days a week. And that's got farmers, it's got farm produce, it's got fresh fruit and vegetables, it's got a fish market, it's got all sorts. And it's got some really cool little eateries there. They've got Korean food there, they've got Vietnamese food in there, Thai food in there. I think there's Italian food in there. There's lots of different really interesting little food stalls in there too. I quite like to go there. My kids love the waffle place. There's a really nice waffle place in there with loads of chocolate sauce and cream and stuff. So there's fresh fruit and vegetable there, and that's all the time. There are periodic markets on campus. Those are usually foods like food stall events on campus where we have the wonderful and Plymouth famous brownie company come in. They come in and sell ridiculously calorific brownies, but I just quit eating chocolate, so that's not going to help me. But also they do like a hot dog stand and a noodle stand and things like that. So that happens periodically. I think it's about monthly. Then there's other pop-up events as well. Plus, there's 9 cafes on campus, including a pizza cafe, including a noodle bar, including hot food, salads, sandwiches. There's one cafe that's fully veggie and vegan food. There's no meat or fish in that one. So that's really nice as well. I just had a wonderful, what did I have? A jalapeno crunch toasted sandwich. Absolutely amazing veggie sandwich today. So there's lots of cool stuff there. So yes, you can get farm produce pretty much anytime via the market. Yeah, and that's about a 5-6 minute walk from campus. Really easy. Good question.
All right, great. Next one coming up. I will be receiving my final transcript by June. Is it all right to accept my offer in June? Not
Sure.
so sure where is this from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good question. Obviously, we have to be unsure until we check the details of any particular application, but typically speaking, it's not unusual for a student to have their final grades by June and to only be in a position to be able to accept the offer by then. That's fine. As I mentioned earlier, I hope I did mention it earlier, we want you to take the next step when you can, and as soon as you can, we'll help you. But we do understand that you're not ready to accept your offer, all of you, right now, if you're still waiting on some grades. So don't worry, focus on your studies, focus on your exams or coursework or whatever you still need to do. Focus on doing as well as you can. And as soon as you do get the ability to confirm to us, let us know ASAP. But yeah, June, you'll be okay.
All right, I think you will like this question really, really much. Is bubble tea available in Plymouth?
Is bubble tea available in Plymouth? Now, I'm not sure if the person who's asked that knows how I feel about bubble tea or not. I'm suspecting maybe they do. Yes, I'm going to put my evil face on now. I don't really like bubble tea. I don't know why you would chew a drink, because if you have to chew a drink, I think it's not a drink, it's food. But you can get bubble tea in Plymouth. There's at least 2 or 3 places that I know of, definitely 2 that I know of, I think a third place. And one of them is about a 2-minute walk from campus. One is in or next to that market I just told you about. There might be a third one as well. And if that is the case, it's also about 4 minutes away. So really near campus. Go enjoy your bubble tea. Probably don't invite me because I'll say no. No, thank you. I mean, good question.
That's for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have another question. Can you recommend any Facebook groups or social platform group regarding off-campus accommodation? But let me try this because if you go to Facebook and you type at the search Facebook and you type 2024/2025 University of Plymouth accommodation, you'll probably find a lot of social media pages that you can check out from there. Because there are some students and they have a group where you can ask questions as well. So that's from Facebook. You need to search it on Facebook. Just type in 2024/2025.
Thank you, Jeannie. That's
Answer.
really helpful. That's hopefully very, very clear for you guys. Do as Jeannie says, go to Facebook, do the search criteria, especially 2024-2025 accommodation, Plymouth, and you'll see what comes up. Thank you, Jeannie.
All
Anything
right,
else?
still on accommodation. I have trouble booking accommodation. I'm a postgraduate student. I'll need some advice over there.
Okay. Hopefully, once you have, and I don't know whether you have or not, but once you have had a look at the page that we told you about, that explains that there are accommodation blocks if you want the hall of residence type accommodation, which will be a mixture of undergraduate and postgraduate students in these accommodation blocks, because they're not technically the universities, but they're full of our students. Hopefully, once you have a look through those, you would find one or more than one that has something that suits you. Now, that may be suiting your budget or suiting your room type, or it has to be a location-related thing. I always try to urge students, where possible, to be a little bit flexible related to room type and especially location, because that probably then gives you a bit more choice. Failing that, then I would suggest you do the other thing, which again, that page advises you to do, which is you can look at the various student accommodation agencies in Plymouth. There's quite a few of them. They're dotted around near the campus. Unsurprisingly, that's a very convenient location for them to be. And they will have details of individual rooms in shared apartments or houses that will be available from September. Again, the first question they tend to ask you is, what type of accommodation do you want, or do you have a location in mind? And they'll ask you what your budget is. So that's why I gave you the typical range of prices that you can expect to pay in Plymouth, so that you've got something in mind. Because if those agencies ask you what you're willing to pay or what you're looking to pay, it's a good idea to give them as realistic a range as you can, because that will help them search their records and find out what might be best for you. So don't worry if you don't have all the answers about accommodation right now. It's great that you're looking in April. It's great that you're going ahead and doing that early. Obviously, that gives you more opportunity and more choice. So if that still doesn't get you where you need, then maybe contact us offline and we'll see if there's any further tips that we can give you individually. And I hope that helps you.
All right, I'll
Got
just
time
move
for a
on to the
last
next
one or
question.
two questions? So I want to try and keep it
Uh,
within the hour if possible.
yeah, not a problem. There is another question about the timeline. I'll be attending a course slightly later in October due to national service commitment. Is that okay?
We might need to have you contact us offline to double check the exact dates. And if it's a particular, well, it will be a particular program, of course, and we'll probably have to get an acceptance or approval or a decision from the academic lead of that program. I say that because some programs do have coursework that's credit bearing, that starts quite early or sometimes immediately, and or some projects that you need to be part of from the very beginning. So if a student is due to arrive late, or foreseeing that, and that's for any student, if you think you might be arriving late because it's unavoidable, then we do need to know the actual date that you would be arrived, not just arriving in Plymouth, but actually arriving and able to sit in a class, like actually attending a class. That's the information we need, as well as your reason why you won't be able to attend on time. And then we need to get approval from the program lead, the head academic in that course. So thank you for the question. I'm glad you've raised it early. Can't give you an answer today, but email us offline to give us your details and we'll look into it with you and for you.
All right, the next question is really good. Plymouth is quite far away from other bigger cities like London and etc. Does it mean it might affect the circumstances of buying things and transporting goods from other countries, like from my home country, which is Southeast Asia?
I don't seem to think it affects things in that way, because the logistics world these days, and we do have a lot of logistics students studying at Plymouth, and maybe some of you joining us in September, the systems these days are pretty adept. They're pretty efficient at getting things from A to B. Okay, admittedly, during the COVID years and immediately afterward, there was a lot of logistics issues, but that wasn't related specifically to Plymouth. That was the whole world. So actually, I have found that when I've had things sent to and from Plymouth, they get there just as easily. It might take a few hours more, but that's not going to be affected by the number of days. I can send things to and from Southeast Asia, as I do, within a couple of days. So I don't think it's a big problem. It shouldn't affect anything really. It should be pretty easy. And don't forget also that Plymouth does have shopping malls, and we do have online suppliers. I won't say which companies they are, but now they're so successful now they're sending rockets into space. You probably know which ones I'm talking about. So of course in the UK, including in Plymouth, you can order loads of things online that come from within the UK or from abroad, and they get to us in a matter of a day or two or something like that. So I ordered a CD 2 days ago. Yes, I still buy CDs. I'm old. And it arrived the next day. And people think, oh, Plymouth's quite far from the big city. No, UK is not that big a country. You'll still find it very easy. Interesting question, though. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add on to that, so some of the students did mention that getting imported goods to Plymouth is even cheaper than countries in Southeast Asia or similar pricing because it's still an import good. So hopefully it helps for those who want Korean noodle. Hey, it's cheaper in Plymouth than in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore.
Yes,
For your
and connected.
information.
Thank you, Jeannie. And connected to that, Plymouth has supermarkets which have international food as their specialty. So we've got the big supermarkets, the big branded ones. Again, there are two very near campus. I can see one of them right now. And that has its own world food section, which has a lot of things. But actually in Plymouth, there are at least 3, 4, maybe more, what I would call international supermarkets, where you can get various different kinds of noodles and different kinds of rice and different kinds of spices and sauces and things like that. They're in the city centre, most of them, or halfway between the city centre and the water, but they're not far away. And students often will go in there and pick up things as well, and that makes it convenient too. You don't always have to order it online.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we just have to pick up one more question because
Sure.
there's a couple of a similar one, which is, will you explain a little bit more about pickup service? I think we missed it probably.
Thank you. And I did allude to it, but I didn't really go into detail because we don't have all the details right now. But essentially, what happens is we offer a London Heathrow Airport pickup service for University of Plymouth students in September. This will be timed for the 9th of September, Welcome Week, as I mentioned. So 9th of September is the important date that I put all those arrows and circles and flashing lights and things to remind you about that key date. So although we don't have all the timings available right now, it will be timed for that date, and it will either be that day and the next day or something like that we offer these services. Now, you might not be buying flights yet. Don't buy your flights until you know you're definitely coming to Plymouth, of course, but you should be looking at arriving on September 9th. And what happens is we'll tell you to get to a certain terminal. I think it's usually Terminal 2, 3, which is what we would call a central terminal at Heathrow. But don't worry, you don't have to remember all this now. It will be on our international web pages at the earlier part of the summer. We're just a month or two a little early for the absolute details. You will have to pre-book that bus pickup. So you'll be met by student ambassadors, University of Plymouth student ambassadors. They'll be wearing a University of Plymouth t-shirt or something like that. And you will meet them and you will have pre-booked your seat on one of these buses, and your luggage, your suitcases will go underneath. It's a proper coach, of course. And then you'll get a seat and you'll have a new neighbour sat next to you, and you can ask where you're from and how long your journey has been so far and compare who's the tiredest person, who's the most excited. Maybe bring a little snack with you is a good idea, but there will be a stop point from Heathrow. It will stop one time for a comfort break and a snack break, and then continue down to Plymouth, and it will bring you right onto campus. From there, that will be where other student ambassadors will meet you and help you to get into your accommodation. Either if it's a hall of residence on campus, they'll just walk with you to your room, to your building, or if it's off campus, they'll arrange cabs to help you get to your accommodation. So that's what happens, but the exact details will be released a little bit later. We do charge for it just because in the past it was difficult when students were booking it, but then because there was no fee involved, they were then cancelling and we didn't know who was actually confirming, and we ended up booking a lot of coaches that we didn't need. But the charge is to cover our costs. It's typically around 20 or 25 British pounds for that service, and that's arguably or almost certainly the cheapest way that you can get from Heathrow to Plymouth. But it is from Heathrow. Don't worry, it is by far the most commonly flown into airport, and it's the easier one of the two in London. The other big one in London is called Gatwick, but it's further from Plymouth, and it would probably not be that many flights available to you anyway. So aim for Heathrow. Remember 9th of September. but more details soon.
Yep. Okay. Can we get just one more?
Go on
One
then.
more, one last one, just one last one. Okay. So it asks here that does Plymouth have any connection of network with big corporation which could offer jobs after we graduate from University of Plymouth? So this is a good question with our recently well-rated for Plymouth.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for the question. So, of course, a large university as University of Plymouth is, we're about 20,000 students, so we're not, not small, we're quite a big deal. Has a lot of programs, but it has a lot of connections and collaborations as well. Now, if you haven't looked into our placement or our careers pages on our website, I strongly encourage you to go do so. Just go to plymouth.ac.uk and look at placements or careers department. Just search for it, because you'll see there's collaborations both within our programs, where some programs are building in a work placement year to get some experience as part of your degree. But also there's career development within the programs themselves and the modules. Also, there's careers events and careers days. Also, there's workshops to build up your CV or to prepare your CV and to prepare for job hunting, effective skills for good job hunting in the UK. And there are job posting sites, both electronic and in person, in the careers department, where you can learn about latest vacancies. There are Meet Plymouth graduate sessions where you can pick the brains of previous students who've now gone into industry or into the workforce and learn how they did it, the secrets of their success and what their experiences have been since. There are lots of things like that, yes. So I think sometimes people think UK must be London or the biggest city because that's where the only opportunities are going to be. Sure, there are lots more of those there, you could argue, but also there are lots more people vying for them. But what I would also say is that a majority of students who want to go into the bigger city in the future don't have to be in that city when they're doing their degree, if that city is much more expensive to live in. Gain your qualification outside, gain your experience outside, but don't rule out going there in future. A lot of graduates, when they get their degree, will get their first job after a degree in a different location. It's very, very common. That's what I did too. Don't forget, of course, that currently there is the graduate route visa option. We are waiting to see if that will be running permanently, if it's going to be changing at any point. So people have heard about that a little bit. Obviously, you must make sure that you're visa eligible for any job that you're applying for. But more on that once we have more details from the UK government.
Thank you. So just to add on to that, Daniel, so we have been recently ranked number 5 in the UK for work experience opportunity. So this is really a reflective of our work in the placement office as well, which help a lot of students to get a placement opportunity and also work opportunity.
Thank you, Jeannie. I remembered that you brought that up and then I totally forgot to say it. Yes, ranked number 5 in the UK of all the universities there are, which is I think 140 or something, 5 in the UK. In the last couple of months, that was announced for work experience opportunities. Pretty good.
All right, so if there's any more question, I think you guys have our email address, which is, I have to repeat again, it's Southeast Asia as in sea.office@plymouth.ac.uk.
Perfect. It remains for me to thank Jeannie for driving the Q&A desk in the background whilst I was busy doing what I do, which is just talk a lot. That's what I do. But more importantly, to thank all students who've attended for paying attention, for sticking through the end, for joining in the Q&A and the polls. If you would like to just let us know how we did with a survey, that would be great. That'll come up at the end via email to you. And then look out for that next one. I'll be inviting you very, very soon to A Day in the Student Life. And I think that's really, really helpful to hear the students' eye view of our current students. So thanks once again. Best of luck with your studies or the rest of your semester if you are studying. And we'll talk to you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.